Suspended Ekurhuleni Metro Police Chief Julius Mkhwanazi appeared before the Police Ad Hoc Committee yesterday, facing explosive claims of ties to crime syndicate kingpin Vusimusi Cat Matlala. He's accused of helping install police blue lights on Matlala's private vehicles, raising serious questions about the integrity of the EMPD. Let's look at his testimony there, but also perhaps echo his testimony in the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry with security analyst Eldred De Klerk. Eldred, all the best with the new year. I feel like I have to say that to you because we're going to be working extensively together again as the Madlanga Commission resumes, so it's wonderful to have you back. But I want us to reflect on that testimony yesterday and some of the tenets that might have stood out for you. What about this admission from Mkhwanazi of a, quote, brotherly relationship with Matlala, and even if no criminal conduct is proven?
Good morning, Iman, and good morning to the Channel 405 family. Yes, indeed. And it's not the first time that he actually says that, and he says that with some affection, Iman. The fact that he doesn't recognize that there are tenets in the Code of Conduct of the Public Service Association and the code that governs public officials that said you've got to be wary and careful of your relationships with others where that relationship can be exploited. So he thinks nothing of the fact that he had a relationship with somebody who he admires, has some affection for, and probably has some aspirations to share a similar lifestyle. That's something that we can all fall foul of, Iman.
What he was laboured on, or what the committee laboured on as well, was the issue of the blue lights and the authorization of the blue lights on Cat Matlala's various vehicles or Matlala-linked vehicles in the city of Ekurhuleni. And we heard these denials about fitting or even authorizing those blue lights. What was your take on the way that he presented his role in that saga?
Well, he seemed to have been duped, Iman, and maybe that's the only word I could think of, or seduced into thinking that he had an appeal from his members. He felt he was genuinely maybe responding to a need within his department or his police department, and he felt that there was somebody who, almost as a quid pro quo, he could do a favor for, do something for, and yet at the same time, they could use that asset once it has been registered. He then insists that that was never followed through on. There was no actual registration that took place. Now, the vehicles might still be standing where they were standing. Whether they have blue lights or not, that's yet to be determined. And whether we need to know that if it was registered, would we be sitting in the same crisis of credibility, because then the vehicles would have been given over to the municipality. However, what he then fails to understand is that process of receiving a gift, which seemed to come with no strings, that in itself is governed by particular regulations and protocols and declarations, and an undertaking by the giver, the gift giver, and the municipality as to what the nature of that gifting is. And he doesn't understand, or he fails to understand, or maybe pretends not to understand the nuances of how this had actually needed to be managed differently. And yes, to his credit, he conceded that maybe he was naive or did something wrong, and for that he sought to apologize, Iman.
But a person in such a senior position, Eldred, that testimony and that stance, the way that you characterize him as somebody who could be useful to people who would seek to take advantage of him, exploit his position and exploit him, what does it say and reflect about the vulnerabilities inside the Metro Police's oversight structures and the people who run them?
In fact, Iman, that's the central question for the ad hoc committee, because it's the ad hoc committee that sets the rules of the game and actually determines the hiring procedures and determines the governance and protocols of how their public officials go about their work. And that's both a policy and a regulatory framework. Yet at the same time, it's also the purview of how do we better prepare, induct, and actually school government officials or public officials, pardon, to do their respective work after they've been hired, they've been inducted into the office, and then they get supervised and monitored during that period. So we've mentioned this before. We have an absence of where's the National School of Government, where's the Public Service Administration, where's SALGA, where's COCTA, and then ultimately, where are public representatives who are now sitting, basically putting somebody to the sword in an irregular ad hoc committee, whereas that kind of inquisitive inquiry and oversight and that robustness in which it's playing itself out now should be something that happens on a consistent and a predictable basis throughout the tenure of a senior public official like a chief of police of a metropolitan police service.
Let's go to one of the more, well, even more, I should say, sinister aspects of evidence relating to Julius Mkhwanazi, and this would be the testimony of Witness D, as he was known in the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, was murdered after testifying. Julius Mkhwanazi's denial of knowing him, given the seriousness of that testimony that was made at the Madlanga Commission.
Well, I think it finally dawned on him that he maybe said a little too much at Madlanga. Now he seems to be taking 2 steps backwards in terms of how he got to be on the scene, what he did on scene, how long he stayed, and the fact that he actually did mention, as to the best of my recollection, I support that contention, the name of Witness D. Now, whether he knew Witness D, whether he recognized him on sight, or whether it dawned on him after the fact that this was the person who in fact saw him there, may have heard what he had to say, allegedly, and therefore he was at risk of the testimony of Witness D. Now, there's no saying that he had anything to do with the death of Witness D. However, the fact that he now almost failing to acknowledge that he even knew the person, saw the witness, and or there was a potential incriminating evidence that the witness may have, I think it's seriously dawning on him the seriousness of what he could be facing following both his testimony at Madlanga and his testimony now at the ad hoc committee, Iman.
And the pursuit by AfriForum of that case by the family of the man who was killed during the incident that Marius van der Merwe, who we then later found out was Witness D, slain outside his home in Boksburg last year. That case seems to be gathering some momentum, and we'll wait to see if there's any outcome from IPID. But let's look then, in closing, Eldred, at where you think and assess Julius Mkhwanazi's credibility to be at in this moment this morning, given his appearance at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry and what he's told the ad hoc committee in Parliament so far.
Well, we also didn't speak about his relationship with the then
city manager, Imogen.
Anyway, the city manager, indeed, and almost the worship there that he had for her, and the difference that he had for her, and his relationship with other officials within the city, because there seems to be the suggestion that, you know, any action taken against him never actually happened, and it seems to dwindle out, and that was because of the behind-the-scenes machinations of these public officials. Iman, I would be, and I think South Africa and ourselves and the rest of us would be surprised if he actually takes office again. He's been suspended twice, and he now should be facing a disciplinary hearing. In that disciplinary hearing, unfortunately, I think he has been his own worst enemy and his own worst witness, and he is likely to have sunk his case to be reinstated as the head of Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, Iman.
Eldred De Klerk, thank you so much for your time and for that analysis, and hopefully see you soon when the Madlanga Commission resumes on the 26th in Pretoria.